Mary had a little lamb, a dark and twisted horror tale. Welcome, traveler, to the Antumbral Grimoire, where shadows whisper and forgotten secrets breathe. Tonight, I bring you a tale of a lamb born in darkness, and a girl whose love may lead her into the very heart of the abyss. Listen closely, for in this story, nothing is quite as it seems. It came one storm-split night when the old ewe screamed until her lungs gave out, and what poured from her, among the blood and mangled flesh, was something not belonging to this world. They said it was born wrong, a blighted thing, squirming in the hay with hooves like cracked obsidian that split and tore on the way out. Mary's mother murmured between breathless prayers, "What's wrong with it?" Her father knew what must be done, clenching the sharpened hatchet, but Mary threw herself onto the blood-soaked straw and screamed, "He's just a baby." Her father raised the hatchet. "Move, child, it must be done," he proclaimed. Mary's mother stayed his hand. She urged him to ease the ewe's suffering first, and let Mary tend to the lamb. She prayed that by some grace, the bundled mess in Mary's arms might distract her from the mound of flesh panting and broken beside them, the blood soaking its fleece once white as snow. After all, it was Mary's ewe that would die that night, a gentle, cherished friend who had followed her for years. Poor thing had raised it since it was but a sweet little lamb. The table was quiet that night as Mary and her parents ate supper, and what little conversation there was consisted only of murmurs about bad omens. The lamb, if it could be called that, stood too quickly, walked too straight, and its eyes were already open by the time they'd cleaned the mess. Piercing eyes that stared at them like a jeweler examining common sand, searching for that one glinting speck of hidden value. Mary. Her mother said if it were allowed to live, it would curse the herd, turn the milk sour, and blacken the wheat. But Mary, the playful child with dirt under her nails and dreams too large for the fence line, waited until dusk and stole the lamb away. She swaddled it in an old shawl and carried it to the woodshed, behind the rusted plow and sacks of feed, into a place no one had entered in years. She lied to her parents that morning, her clothes soiled, her hair smelling faintly of soot, and claimed the lamb had passed in the night. She said it only felt right that she be the one to bury it. She spun tales of fake rites and endless tears as her mother comforted her with hugs, and her father sighed with relief. He'd felt sorry for his sweet little Mary and her tender heart. But the farm was better off without such a beast. Or so he thought. She fed him scraps and comforted him with songs when the wind howled through the shed's loose siding. She named him Ember, for his eyes that seemed to smolder within fur, if you could call it fur, coarse and black as coal. As he grew, he no longer looked like anything she'd ever seen. The other sheep shied from him when he wandered too near the pasture fence. Birds never landed on the shed roof. And once, when Mary scraped her palm open, Ember licked the blood slowly, methodically, then looked up at her with warm, golden eyes. She told herself it was affection, typical of any loyal pet. She told herself many things. As weeks passed, hiding Ember became nearly impossible. Pets that strayed too close to the shed vanished with barely a trace. The missing ones were easy enough to blame on coyotes, so long as Mary was quick to gather and bury what little remained after Ember had fed. No, the real trouble came as Ember's hunger for Mary's attention deepened. He could not follow where she went for fear of being seen, but his screams and howls would always bring Mary back swiftly to his side. His cries were moaning, dragging sounds that rose and fell with strange cadence, and at times seemed almost human, almost conscious. They clawed their way through wood and straw, burrowing into Mary's skull like termites ripping and tearing their way through a rotting stump. She swore the sound must carry for miles, past the barn, beyond the house and the fields, clear to the edge of town. But her parents never stirred, no matter how loud the wailing grew. Only Mary ever seemed to hear the cries, but that did nothing to soothe her. She tried stuffing her ears with cloth a few times, anything to block the noise for even a moment, but nothing could keep the sound from tearing into her mind. In the end, she always returned to Ember, cradling him close and whispering frantic lullabies into his fur, as if begging a child not to scream. It was the only way to silence him, the only way to stop the crying. She spent many nights nearly freezing in that old woodshed, but Mary endured, her heart full of love, even as her eyes burned from the smell of sulfur. She had hoped that Ember's calls would lessen as he grew, but his demands only deepened. At first, he only called at night or when it was close to his feedings, but soon, his demands for her time became insatiable. Mary could only slip away when he slept, and even then, just barely long enough to finish a few chores or quell her parents' suspicions. Mary started making excuses to avoid going to town, and her friends whispered that she smelled of earth and soot. Her mother grew suspicious, and it wasn't long before her worries reached the family doctor. Mary was isolated and had become sickly and frail-looking, as all her time was spent on chores and caring to Ember's whims. The doctor prescribed rest and iron, insisted there would be no words to the contrary. He didn't realize at the time, but his recommendations would only isolate Mary further and give Ember even more opportunity to grab hold of her. By the time autumn came, Ember was the size of a small deer. His horns had grown, not curled like the others, but straight back, like jagged branches on a drying tree. His eyes never caught the sun, but seemed to burn with every bit of its intensity. One night, Mary sat alone in the shed with her lantern low. Ember curled beside her, breathing slow and so hot his breath nearly burned her leg. She dozed off against his flank, lips moving in half-formed prayer. And in the hush of the night, a voice spoke, soft, deep, and with a slight rattle. Not in words ever uttered by human tongues, not quite, but in meaning. Ember whispered, "Mary, my sweet Mary, what would I ever do without you?" Mary didn't stir, but her lips gently parted with a smile, as the world around them seemed to melt away. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was ash and flame, and everywhere that Mary went, the darkness called her name. The darkness calls to Mary still, and her story is far from over. If you dare to walk further into the shadows, subscribe and join me for more twisted tales that lurk just beyond the light. Until next time, keep your lantern close, and beware what stirs in the dark.